There are moments that make no noise, they just break something inside, and we realize it later when everything is too quiet. The funeral was discreet, few people. No speeches, no loud tears, just the sound of footsteps on the grass and the creaking of the coffin lid closing, as if the world were warning, it's over. Now it's up to you. Liam didn't cry, he didn't even move much. He was there, but it seemed as if his soul had stopped a station earlier. 2 hours later, at the lawyer's office, he signed what would be the beginning of everything. Or perhaps the end. The inheritance was ready, accounts, properties, companies, investments, all unlocked. But no one asked how he was doing. No one talked about his father. No one said, "I'm sorry." If this story is stirring something inside you, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from. Liam returned home that night with the inheritance documents under his arm and silence clinging to his back. The apartment was exactly as he had left it. Modern, well-decorated, strategically impersonal. Nothing there reminded him of his father. Nothing there reminded him of affection. Everything was functional, just like the relationship they had. He dropped the briefcase on the table and went to the kitchen, where the cold light from the refrigerator contrasted with the darkness of the room. He took a glass and poured himself some wine, the good, expensive kind his father collected but never drank with anyone. He drank alone. He turned on the TV. News channel. Stock market up. His father's company's shares rising after the announcement of the formal succession. The market seemed satisfied. But Liam just felt a strange echo, as if he were living a life he didn't ask for, within a script written by another man. He walked over to the bookcase where there was an old photo, the two of them, father and son, at some corporate event. Neither of them was smiling. They were side by side, yes, but there was no warmth there, just a pose. And there, standing in front of that frozen image, he realized the inheritance hadn't started today. It came from long before. It came from the unbroken silences, from the hurried dinners, from the practical conversations. He inherited the bank account, but he also inherited the absence. The next morning, Liam woke up before sunrise, not because of insomnia, but because something inside him was throbbing as if it were out of place. He showered in silence, dressed as if preparing for a trial, and went straight to his father's old office. The place was now his. But it didn't feel that way. Upon entering, he smelled the faint scent of leather and aged wood. Nothing had changed since the last time they were there together, or rather coexisted in the same environment, because they hadn't really talked in years. On the table was a leather briefcase with the company crest, and inside it something unexpected, a white envelope with Liam's name handwritten on it. The handwriting was firm, sober, familiar. The letter looked recent. With careful hands, he opened it. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and that I left behind more than stocks and property. I left holes. I left unanswered questions, and perhaps a son who deserved more than I was able to offer." Liam sat down. He read each line as if he were hearing for the first time a voice that had always wanted to speak, but never found the time. "The inheritance I leave you is only a part of what I tried to build. The rest is lost in what I did not know how to feel. If you can, forgive the man who raised you with strictness, trying to protect you from the same coldness that shaped me." He didn't cry, but he felt something flow inside him, as if a crack had finally opened where there had once been concrete. Liam put the letter inside his jacket and walked away aimlessly. He needed to breathe outside those walls. The city was still asleep, but he walked as if the world had woken up before him. He passed closed cafes, dark shop windows, and entered an almost empty park, where the sound of the wind was more sincere than any recent conversation. He sat down on a wooden bench. There, among the leaves and a sky that was beginning to brighten, he felt something strange. Time slowing down. As if life, for the first time in years, was allowing him to feel, without negotiating, without disguising. He took his cell phone out of his pocket. He almost called someone, but there was no one. His mother's number was saved, but they barely spoke. His friends? They all orbited the same corporate world, intimate with the same goals, but strangers to the soul. So he opened his browser and typed in a word he had read in the letter, almost unnoticed: DNA code of wealth. It was a kind of method, perhaps a philosophy, perhaps a tool for reconstruction. It wasn't advertising, it was almost a silent invitation. He read a sentence: "Peace is not born when you conquer the world. It appears when you stop running away from yourself." And then he understood. He had everything, but the inheritance came without a manual. What he discovered along the way was that true wealth begins where silence ends. And the path to that is in the first pinned comment. Liam didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he knew he no longer wanted to carry the legacy of a man who never learned to feel. In the days that followed, Liam did something unprecedented. He stopped acting like an heir. He didn't attend the company's press conference. He canceled meetings. He ignored emails. It was as if the world demanded continuity, and he, for the first time, chose silence, but now of his own free will. He spent hours in the old room where he grew up, the same room where, as a child, he learned not to ask questions, not to show weakness, to appear mature before his time. On the shelf were still the books his father had put there when he was 10, about leadership, economics, war strategies. None about affection, none about pain. He picked one up and for the first time didn't open it. He just looked at it. Then he put it back. In its place he left the letter, as if to say this was what he needed to have read at that age. Later, while rummaging through old boxes in the attic, he found something forgotten, a photo of the two of them, laughing. It was rare. They were in a small boat, without suits, without posing, just sunburned skin, wind on their faces, and a moment that escaped becoming the rule. It moved him, not out of nostalgia, but because it showed that, somewhere in the past, there was still room for love, even if disguised as strictness. That night, he slept without wine, without noise, without guilt, and for the first time in years, without fear of waking up the next day. The transformation did not come all at once. There was no epiphany, no grand revelation, just small decisions made in silence. Liam began to talk less about numbers and more about memories. He began to listen, to others and to himself. He visited the company headquarters weeks later. Everyone expected aggressive new leadership, but he surprised them by ending the meeting with a single sentence: "Nothing we build is worth anything if no one wants to remember us." Some laughed, others fell silent. But he knew he had planted something there, not a business idea, an idea of humanity. Back at the mansion, he began to renovate the spaces, not with luxury, but with life. He replaced the cold paintings with real photos of his father, his mother, himself as a child, trying not to forget where they came from, nor who they almost lost trying to succeed. And every night, before going to sleep, he read a page from the notebook he had started writing. In it, he did not write down achievements. He wrote down absences he did not want to repeat. It was his own manual of emotional inheritance, an attempt to break, little by little, the cycle of inherited silence. The last paragraph he wrote said, "If I have a child, I don't want him to inherit silence. I want him to inherit presence, because now I know what money doesn't cover, time does." And there, in that intimate text, he freed himself, not from the family name, but from the prison it represented. Today, Liam's inheritance still exists. The assets, the real estate, the name in the market, everything remains. But what has changed is the way he carries it. Not as a burden, but as a warning. He speaks little about his father, not out of hurt, but out of respect for the silence that the two never managed to break. And when he speaks, it is with care, with mature tenderness, like someone who understands that some men love, but don't know how to show it. At a recent dinner, a longtime partner commented, "Your father would be proud of the man you've become." Liam just smiled and replied calmly, "Maybe, but I would be more so if he had known this man in life." In the library of his home, among the old books, a discreet shelf holds the notebook of emotional legacies he wrote. Next to it, his father's letter, folded delicately. They are different documents, but they tell the same story, one that began with silence and ended with awareness. Not all pain needs to be repeated. If you've listened this far, maybe you're ready to break what they shaped you to carry. Tell me in the comments, what did you inherit and no longer want to pass on?